Why did Jesus have to die on the cross to save mankind? Wasn't there another way? Couldn't we just tell God we were sorry for sinning and everything would be okay? Ever thought about it? Why in the world did God instruct the ancient Israelites to slaughter animals to cleanse the sanctuary where the Ark of the Covenant was in the temple or tabernacle? Sooner or later you must come to grasp of the fact that you are a spiritual being, not just a carnal human in the flesh which is destined to die one day. Yes, of course it pointed to Christ's ultimate sacrifice. But then that begs the question, why does Christ's sacrifice cleanse God's temple? And then, what exactly is God's temple? If you believe in fairy tales, you may believe it is some place way far away up in outer space somewhere. But then why does the New Testament tell us repeatedly that we are the temple of God? That is, if God's Spirit dwells in us, could it be that when we sinned initially we became carnal, or of the flesh and subject to death, because sin causes death? God is holy and sinless and is eternal. He alone has eternal life and always has and always will. So we being His creation, we're not destined to die, but since we have all chosen to sin in this life, or prior to it maybe, we are now subject to death. So what is the remedy to this problem? Plus, isn't God omnipresent, meaning He is all places at all times? Plus time doesn't pertain to God who is outside the dimension of time. Well, that's some pretty deep stuff, huh? Well yeah, eternity and your eternal destiny is pretty deep stuff too, right? Well, amazingly it is death. We must accept the perfect death sacrifice and thereby die ourselves to our carnal nature and take on the nature of Christ who died for us. That is the power of His resurrection. Sin and death could not hold Him. He was sinless and had power over them. That's why when we put our faith in Him and His sacrifice, we can die to our sinful carnal death-bound nature and live anew in the power of His resurrection. God could either destroy His entire creation and go from there with nothing that was sinful, or He could cleanse His creation by showing them that choosing His power and holiness they could become holy and live forever with Him. That's what sanctification means. To become holy, sinless. So now we come back to this question, why is it that blood cleanses us and the universe from sin? Think of it this way. The entire universe is God's domain or temple. It's where He dwells. God's universe has to be cleansed of sin, otherwise it will not have eternal life. It's because life is in the blood. It symbolizes life, and our carnal sinful nature's blood is corrupt. Christ, who is God's Son and God manifest in the flesh, shed His perfect sinless blood to cleanse us from sin and death. How does it do that, you ask? Because if by our own free will we accept the fact that without God we will die. Only by willingly trusting in God to indwell us with His holiness can we live forever with Him. Maybe thinking of it this way will help. We are God's children. God is teaching us the ultimate lesson through our temporary life here on earth. Some people will not learn that lesson, which is to put their life and faith totally in God and His love and holiness. That's why Christ will rule with His saints, those He sanctified in this life, and judge or correct those who haven't yet in the age to come. That's why the Apostle Paul wrote 1 Corinthians 15:25-29, for He must reign until He has put all His enemies under His feet. The last enemy to be destroyed is death. For God has put all things in subjection under His feet. But when it says, all things are put in subjection, have you ever really thought of why it is that Christ's death can save all of humanity? What is it about His shedding His blood that redeems us? Couldn't there be a better, or let's say easier way? It is plain that He is accepted who put all things in subjection under Him. 28 When all things are subjected to Him, then the Son Himself will also be subjected to Him who put all things in subjection under Him, that God may be all in all. Could it be that by accepting Christ's sacrifice for us, we freely submit to His saving grace or divine influence in our lives to transform us into the image or likeness of His sinless Son? This is why I believe Christ will reign on earth with the saints, which are the first to accept Him as Lord and be transformed into His likeness, thereby able to reign with Him and lead and correct the rest of humanity to conform to the image of Christ. Sin brings death. Obviously Satan sinned before man did, as he is the one who deceived man into sinning, is symbolized by the allegorical, I believe, story of Eve and the apple.